He had a son and a daughter, and his wife was Summer Sterling, the woman who consistently topped the Forbes list, who Time magazine had dubbed the #1 woman every man in the world wants to marry. A woman the British royal family was reportedly angling to set up with a prince. Everyone said Cole Anderson was the luckiest man alive. So, the first thing he did was take the divorce papers to her first love. He slid the agreement across the polished table to Julian Vance, his voice calm. I want a divorce. Summer is yours. The kids are yours, too. Julian stared at him, stunned, unable to believe that the man who'd occupied the role of husband for 6 years would suddenly just give up. Cole added flatly, since they all prefer you anyway, I'll make it easy for you. Just get Summer to sign. Once the legal waiting period is over, I'll be gone. This time, he wouldn't repeat the mistakes of his past. He wouldn't continue being the invisible Mr. Anderson. Julian's fingertips traced the rim of his coffee cup, his brow furrowed. Cole, what kind of game are you playing? Cole watched the emotions flicker across Julian's face and repeated calmly, I'm not playing a game, I'm just done. Cole, do you have any idea how many men would kill to be in your position? I do, Cole said, meeting his gaze. That's why I'm giving it to you. A crack finally appeared in Julian's perfect facade. He stared at the papers for a long moment before finally taking them. Fine. If you're being so generous, I won't be polite. He leaned forward. But you should know, once I have something, I never let it go. Don't worry, Cole said with a slight, humorless smile. I won't have any regrets. After all, in his last life, he'd already tasted what it was to die utterly alone. Julian got up, moved to another table in the Bluebird Cafe, and gracefully pulled out his phone, his fingers tapping the screen. When the call connected, his voice instantly softened. Summer, I'm at the Bluebird. Can you come pick me up? Cole, sitting in the corner, felt a bitter smile touch his lips. Once upon a time, he'd call Summer 10 times and get her assistant 9 of them. Now, in less than 20 minutes, the woman who was perpetually in a meeting appeared at the cafe door. Through the glass, Cole watched Summer in her black custom-tailored suit dress, accentuating her long, slender legs. His 6-year-old son, Leo, and 4-year-old daughter, Mia, launched themselves at Julian, smothering him in hugs and kisses. Uncle Julian, Mia chirped, rubbing her cheek against his chest. Summer placed a cake box on the table, her long fingers pushing it gently toward him. Chocolate, your favorite. I had the chef go easy on the sugar. Julian's eyes lit up. You always remember. Cole, forgotten in his corner, dug his fingernails into his palm. After 6 years of marriage, Summer didn't even know what flavor he liked. In his last life, when he was sick in the hospital and craved a simple rice pudding, she'd sent her assistant to buy some, and they brought back mango sorbet. He was allergic to mangoes. What are you in the mood for tonight? Summer's voice was a low, smooth alto, French or Italian. Julian just smiled, pulling the divorce papers from his briefcase. Before that, there's a document I wanted you to look at. He flipped it open to the signature page. I have my eye on a new condo, but my liquid cash is a little tight. I was wondering if you could. Summer took the pen and signed her name. Without even glancing at the contents, between you and me, why do we have to be so formal? Is Uncle Julian buying a new house? Leo asked, his little face tilted up. Mom, you should buy a place next door. Mia and I want to move in with Uncle Julian. We don't want to be with Dad all the time. Summer's brow twitched, but seeing the hopeful looks in her children's eyes, she relented. All right, we'll get a place, no need for all that trouble, Julian said quickly. I'll keep 3 rooms free for Leo, Mia, and you. You can come stay whenever you want. The children cheered. Mia even threw her arms around Julian's neck and kissed his cheek. Uncle Julian is the best, 1,000 times better than Dad. Cole's heart felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible hand, a dull, suffocating ache that made it hard to breathe. He saw the corner of Summer's mouth curve upward in a gentle smile, a warmth she had never once shown him. Unable to watch any more, he picked up his bag and walked out. The moment he stepped outside, memories of his past life flooded back. In that life, he and Summer were joined in a corporate merger of a marriage. They'd had a son and a daughter, and he'd lived to be 62, but he'd never known a day of happiness. It was all because Summer's heart had always belonged to her childhood sweetheart, Julian Vance. After they broke up, Julian had gone abroad. Summer had drowned her sorrows in alcohol for a few days, but her pride kept her from trying to win him back. Instead, she'd agreed to her family's arrangement. Summer had been his dream since he was a teenager. Cool, independent, the heir to the Sterling Empire. What young man in New York's high society didn't dream of marrying her? So, when he learned of their impending union, he was ecstatic. But after the wedding, he poured his entire being into loving her, only to be met with her perpetual distance and indifference until Julian came back. She never mentioned divorce, but her gaze never left Julian. Worse, both of their children adored Julian, growing more and more distant from him. In his later years, Cole was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Citing a need for a quiet recuperation, Summer abandoned him in their old estate. On his birthday, he'd shakily called his wife and children, only to learn they were on vacation with Julian in the Maldives. He tried to cook himself a simple meal, but his confused memory led him to forget to turn off the stove. As the flames consumed him, the last thing Cole remembered was the icy look in Summer's eyes as she placed the wedding ring on his finger. He closed his eyes in agony, his only wish that if there was a next life, he would never waste it on her again. When Cole returned to their penthouse, it was already dark. He didn't rest. He went straight to the master closet and began clearing things out. Summer's dresses, the children's toys, the family photos. One by one, he tossed them into cardboard boxes. "What are you doing?" Summer's voice cut through the silence from behind him. Cole turned to see her standing in the doorway, holding the children's hands, her brow furrowed in disapproval. "Why are you throwing our stuff away, Daddy?" Mia ran over, her face flushing with anger when she saw her favorite teddy bear in a box. Leo glared at him. "We just want to hang out with Uncle Julian for a little while. Do you have to be so dramatic?" Summer's gaze was as cold as ever. "The children like spending time with Julian. Are you really going to throw a tantrum over something so trivial?" "I'm not angry," Cole said calmly. "Liar," Mia shrieked. "You're just jealous of Uncle Julian. That's why you're throwing away my teddy bear. You're a bad daddy." "When I grow up, I'm moving in with Uncle Julian," Leo said viciously, pulling his sister back, "and I'm never coming back to see you." Summer didn't stop their outburst. She just arched a perfect eyebrow, her deep eyes sweeping over Cole as if he were a stranger making a scene. "Enough," she said, her voice crisp with an innate authority. She smoothed down her dress with a careless hand. "I have a video conference with the board. Throw away whatever you want. Just keep it down." The moment the door clicked shut, Cole's eyes burned. His heart felt like it had been torn to shreds, every breath tasting of blood. He wiped his tears, looked at the mess around him, and suddenly, he laughed. "Don't worry, I wouldn't disturb her." For the rest of his life, he never would again. He no longer woke up at 5 a.m. to prepare a nutritious breakfast for the children. He no longer waited up for Summer to return from her late-night functions to make her a soothing herbal tea. The household chores he had once considered his duty were now all left to the housekeeper. At first, no one noticed the difference. Not until Leo was late for school and got a reprimand from his teacher. Not until Mia couldn't find her homework notebook. Not until Summer's favorite antique watch stopped ticking. The staff scrambled, but they could never quite match the standards set by the master of the house. The kitchen sink piled up with unwashed dishes, the living room was strewn with toys, and the ironed dresses were never quite crisp enough. The once immaculate home slowly descended into chaos. When Summer pushed open the bedroom door, Cole was leaning against the window reading. Sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains, casting dappled shadows on him. "How long are you going to keep this up?" she asked from the doorway, her voice low. Cole closed his book and looked up at her. "I'm not keeping anything up." "Then why? Have you stopped taking care of things around here?" She took a few steps closer, the faint scent of cedarwood from her perfume filling the air. "Are you still angry about the other day?" "I'm not angry. You set the book aside. I just don't want to do it anymore." Summer narrowed her eyes, her long fingers tapping lightly on the desk. "Reason I'm tired," he said evenly. "There are maids. It can get done without me." He thought of his past life, how he'd woken before dawn every day. Summer's coffee had to be exactly 185. The toast, a perfect golden brown. The children's clothes had to be hand-washed, even their socks ironed flat. And what had it gotten him? Summer's tenderness for Julian, the children's affection for Uncle Julian, and a lonely death at 62. "Cole." Her voice turned cold. "If you're having a tantrum, just say so. Don't act like a 3-year-old. He smirked. "I'm not having a tantrum. I just want to rest." Before he could finish, the door was thrown open. Leo and Mia stormed in, their faces masks of fury. "Dad is being so lazy," Mia shrieked. "We want Uncle Julian to come take care of us." Leo chimed in. "Uncle Julian is way more patient than you. He works harder than you. He's a million times better than you." Summer's gaze remained locked on Cole's face as if waiting for him to break, but he just took a deep breath and said softly, "If you think he's so great, then bring him over. I have no problem with that." The air froze. Summer's expression finally darkened into a thunderous storm. "Are you sure?" Cole took another breath. "Perfectly sure." "Let's go, Mom." Mia tugged impatiently at Summer's sleeve. "I want Uncle Julian here right now. With Uncle Julian here, we won't need you anymore." Leo jeered, making a face at Cole. "You could just leave. Get out of this house." Summer gave Cole one last look. Seeing him still unmoved, she turned and strode out with the children. Cole stood rooted to the spot, listening to the sound of the car engine fading into the distance. He slowly closed his eyes. Soon, he would give them exactly what they wanted. He would leave them in this house for good. "This sofa is so drab," Julian said, his long fingers brushing over the genuine leather. He turned to Summer with a soft smile. Summer, darling, can we swap it for a cream-colored one? Without batting an eye, Summer instructed the housekeeper, do as Mr. Vance says. Cole stood on the landing of the stairs, watching his movers carry out the sofa she had painstakingly selected just 6 months ago. Leo and Mia trailed behind, Julian like two little shadows, pointing excitedly, Uncle Julian, this throw pillow has to go, too. The one Dad bought is hideous. Julian stroked their heads gently. All right, we'll replace them all. Cole's fingers tightened into a fist, then slowly relaxed. He had hand-stitched those pillows for Summer when she was pregnant, stuffing them with hypoallergenic down feathers because the kids had sensitive skin as babies. Now they were being tossed into the trash without a second thought on the following days. The house became increasingly foreign. At the dining table, Julian sat in Cole's old seat, thoughtfully serving food to the children. Summer would occasionally pour him a cup of coffee, her long fingers pushing the cup toward him, her eyes holding a softness Cole had never received. At night, the living room lights would dim, and the four of them would huddle on the new sofa to watch movies. Mia would be curled up in Julian's lap, Leo leaning on Summer's shoulder, their laughter echoing through the halls. When Cole walked past, they wouldn't even glance his way, as if he were completely invisible. The irony was laughable. Summer, Leo, and Mia had always been absurdly demanding about their quality of life. But now, he watched as Julian casually tossed her multi-million-dollar Patek Philippe watch face down on the coffee table, and she just smiled indulgently as she put it on. He watched the kids happily wear their school uniforms, which Julian had carelessly thrown in the washer with yesterday's sauce stains still on the collars. He watched as Julian dished takeout on plates and claimed he'd cooked it himself, and no one called him out. Even more absurdly, they treated Julian, a man with no blood relation, better than they had ever treated him, a husband and father. Julian, don't bother with these menial tasks. Summer stopped Julian as he was about to clear away the tea set, her fingers gently resting on his wrist. Your hands are for playing the piano. Uncle Julian, I'll get your bag. Leo eagerly took Julian's limited edition briefcase, an obsequious look on his face that Cole had never seen on his own son. Mr. Vance just needs to rest, the housekeeper said respectfully, handing him a pair of Italian handmade slippers. Leave everything else to us. How ironic. He had been a stay-at-home dad in this house for 6 years, and they had taken him completely for granted. Julian arrived and was immediately treated like a king. Even staff gossiped. Mrs. Sterling is so good to Mr. Vance. I've never seen her treat Mr. Anderson like that, and the kids are so attached to him. I'm telling you, this house is going to have a new master soon. Cole was already numb to it all. He ignored everything, quietly packing his belongings until that afternoon, when his phone buzzed frantically. Sir, the young master and young miss are having an allergic reaction at school. An ambulance just took them to the hospital. When Cole arrived at the hospital, the children had already been rushed into the emergency room. Summer stood in the hallway, her trench coat draped casually over her arm, her eyes churning with cold fury. Cole, she said, her voice low and tight with suppressed rage. What in the hell are you doing? Cole froze. What? They're allergic to mangoes. Did you not know that? Summer advanced on him, her slender frame radiating an intimidating aura. Why did you let them drink mango juice? It wasn't me. Cole looked her straight in the eye. I never bring mangoes into the house. After the first time the kids had been hospitalized from eating mangoes, he'd been obsessively careful, warning everyone, even reviewing the school cafeteria menu himself. How could he make such a rookie mistake? Not you, Summer sneered. Then who? The maid, or did they just decide to poison themselves? Cole opened his mouth to speak, but a nurse pushed the door open. The children are awake in the hospital room. Leo and Mia lay on the beds, their faces pale. When they saw him enter, their eyes flickered. What happened? Summer demanded. The two children exchanged a look. Vince simultaneously pointed at Cole. It was Dad. He bought snacks that had mango in them. Cole's entire body went rigid. He stared at them in disbelief. What are you saying? Bill's dad? Mia cried, her voice thick with tears. He knew we were allergic, but he gave it to us on purpose. Leo nodded emphatically. He's so mean. Cole's hand gripped the doorframe, his knuckles turning white. Leo, Mia, do you have any idea what you're saying? You'd better tell the truth right now. That's enough. Summer shot to her feet, grabbing his wrist. Cole, is this how you act as a father? You not only harm them, but you also try to bully them into lying for you. I didn't. Cole's voice trembled slightly. Are you trying to say they're framing you? She scoffed. They're just children. You can't even take responsibility for this. Do you even deserve to be a father? The two children burst into tears. Summer immediately let go of him and turned to comfort them, but their crying only grew louder, their small faces turning red. Mommy, Mia sobbed, it hurts so much. How can we make it better? Summer asked softly, gently wiping away her tears. Leo looked at Cole, his eyes red. He's allergic to mangoes too. Make him drink mango juice. Make him feel what we feel. An icy chill washed over Cole. He looked at Summer, and the frost in her eyes made him feel cold to the bone. Fine. She straightened up and snapped her fingers. 2 bodyguards immediately entered the room. Hold him down. Before Cole could react, he was forced into a chair. A bodyguard pinched his jaw, forcing his mouth open. A full liter of mango juice was poured down his throat. The sickeningly sweet liquid choked him, and he coughed violently, his throat burning. A red rash spread across his skin at a visible rate. His face began to swell, and his breathing became labored. He clawed desperately at his neck, his vision blurring as he looked. At Summer, she just stood there watching coldly, making no move to stop them. The children had stopped crying. They were clapping their hands, excited. Serve him right. He deserves to suffer, too. Before the darkness consumed him, the last thing Cole saw was the glacial indifference in Summer's eyes. He didn't know how much time had passed when he woke up in a hospital bed. His throat was raw, and the allergic rash still lingered on his face. He could hear a familiar voice outside the room. It was Julian. Summer, I honestly didn't know they were allergic. I was just trying to make them some juice. It's not your fault. Summer's voice was impossibly gentle. You didn't know. If only I'd come forward sooner, you wouldn't have misunderstood. Cole, Julian said, his tone laced with regret. Leo, Mia, you two as well. It was all my fault. How could you protect me by blaming everything on your father? The children's whimpering voices came through clearly. Uncle Julian, we're sorry. Mia sniffled. We just don't like Dad. Yeah, Leo added, he's always bossing us around, not letting us have snacks and making us go to bed on time. We just wanted him to leave. Cole's fingers clenched the bedsheet, his knuckles white. These were the children he had given up his life to care for. He remembered when 2-year-old Leo was sick with a high fever and the house was empty. The assistant told him Summer was in a crucial meeting and couldn't be disturbed. He had been swamped with his own work but had to grit his teeth and handle it alone. Mia had been frail since birth, and he had spent countless nights researching diets and new medical treatments for her while Summer was overseas for a major corporate acquisition. And now, the 2 children he had fought so hard to protect had become the ones who hurt him the most. A sudden ring from his phone broke the silence. It was the airline confirming his flight information. Mr. Anderson, your one-way ticket to Portland has been confirmed. Would you like to select a seat? Window, please. Thank you. Cole hastily wiped away a tear, his voice barely a whisper. Just as he hung up, the hospital room door opened. Summer strode in, her posture impeccable, her long legs carrying her with a steady, confident rhythm. Who was that on the phone? She asked casually. Cole placed his phone aside. A friend. Summer didn't press. She just stood by his bed, looking down at him. There was a mistake about the other day. It was Julian who gave them the mango juice. Her tone was as calm as if she were discussing the weather. But he didn't know, so we're just going to let it go. Cole's heart felt like it was being crushed by an invisible hand, the pain so intense he could barely breathe. When she thought it was him, she was ready to kill him. But when it was Julian, it was just a simple, forgivable mistake because he didn't know. He opened his mouth, wanting to question her, to scream, to unleash all the pent-up grief and injustice. But when the words reached his lips, all that came out was a nearly inaudible, okay. It was as if all his strength had been drained away. He was so tired, so exhausted, he didn't even have the energy to argue. The injustices that had once kept him up at night, the resentment that had built day by day, now just melted into a bitter, self-macking smile. The difference between being loved and not being loved was just that simple. Summer seemed slightly surprised by his reaction. She paused, then added, the kids will go to summer camp next week. Julian and I will go with them. You can go home by yourself. She waited for him to beg or protest like he used to, but Cole just nodded calmly. I understand. Summer frowned, sensing something was off, but her phone rang at that moment. She glanced at the caller ID. Something came up at the office. I have to go. After the door closed, Cole finally unclenched his fist. Crescent-shaped bloody marks were etched into his palm. Over the next few days, Cole's phone vibrated incessantly. It was all messages from Julian, a stream of photos and videos documenting the fun at summer camp. In one video, Leo and Mia were proudly introducing Julian to their friends. This is our dad. The other kids ooh-hooed and awed in envy. Wow, your dad is so handsome. Your mom is beautiful and your dad is handsome. You guys are so lucky. One child asked curiously, so, who's the guy who usually drops you off at school? In a video, Leo and Mia's expressions froze for a second. Oh, that's just our driver. Cole's hand trembled, and the glass of water he was holding fell to the floor, shattering. He slowly crouched down, looking at the broken pieces, and suddenly, started to laugh. So, that's what he had been all these years, just a free driver. But it didn't matter. This driver was about to be decommissioned. From now on, they could have their beloved dad take care of them. A week later, the housekeeper brought Leo and Mia back to the penthouse. The moment they walked in, they ran straight to the kitchen, their faces alight with unconcealed glee. "Dad," Mia shouted shrilly. "You know what? Uncle Julian sprained his ankle at the parent-child sports day, and Mom was so worried," Leo eagerly added. Mom booked an entire hospital wing for Uncle Julian's treatment. She even postponed her board meetings to stay by his side. Cole stood in front of the oven, listening quietly to their boasting, his hands steadily putting on oven mitts. "Dad, are you even listening?" Mia stomped her foot impatiently. "Mom is so nice to Uncle Julian, way better than she is to you." A ding from the oven cut her off. The sweet aroma of cake instantly filled the kitchen. The children's eyes lit up, and they rushed over. "It's a cake." Leo stood on his tiptoes. "I want some." Cole took out the baking pan. The edges of the cake were slightly burnt. He frowned and scraped the entire thing into the trash can. "Ah!" Mia shrieked. "Why did you throw it away? It's burnt. You can't eat it," Cole said calmly. "You're lying." Leo kicked the trash can in a rage. "You did it on purpose. You're still mad at us about what happened, so you don't want to give us any cake." Mia's face turned beet red. "We don't have a father like you." Cole took off the oven mitts, his heart feeling that familiar, crushing grip. He looked at the two children he had given his life to raise and suddenly felt like he was looking at strangers. "Good," he said softly, "because I don't have children like you either. From now on, go find Julian." With that, he turned and walked toward the stairs. Behind him, he heard the children's hysterical screams. "We hate you. We'll hate you forever." Cole's steps faltered for a second, but he didn't turn back. Just as his foot landed on the third step, a sudden violent shove hit his back. Go to hell! A sharp pain shot through his body. Warm liquid trickled down from his forehead, blurring his vision. The two children stood at the top of the stairs, their faces twisted in malicious glee. "Serves you right," Mia clapped. "That's what you get for not giving us cake," Leo jeered. Cole struggled to push himself up, blood dripping from his chin onto the polished floor. He looked at the two little demons before him and couldn't reconcile them with the fragile children he had fought tooth and nail to save when they were sick in the hospital. The front door suddenly swung open. "What's going on?" Summer's low voice echoed through the hall. Julian followed behind her. All three of them froze at the scene. "Mommy?" The children's faces instantly changed. They ran to her crying. "Daddy threw the cake away and wouldn't let us eat it. And he said he doesn't want us anymore." "Boo-hoo." Summer's gaze fell on the discarded cake in the trash, then shifted to the blood-covered Cole. Her brow furrowed. "Cole, why do you have to pick fights with two children?" Her voice was as cold as ice. "Saying things like that to your own flesh and blood. Do you deserve to be a father?" Cole pushed himself up against the wall, blood staining the collar of his shirt. He looked at Summer and suddenly laughed. "In your eyes, when have I ever deserved anything?" His voice was hoarse. "Haven't you always just seen me as a tool to take care of the kids?" Summer's pupils constricted. "Since the husband you want is Julian," Cole said, wiping the blood from his face, "and the kids only want him as their father, then I'll step down. I'll make your happy family of 4 complete." The air crackled with tension. Summer's face turned ugly. She stared at Cole as if truly seeing him for the first time. "Cole, don't forget." Her voice was low and frigid. "Our families arranged this marriage for business. There were never any feelings involved. What did you want from me, love?" She let out a cold laugh. "Sorry, I can't give you that." Cole laughed at her words, but as he laughed, tears streamed down his face. Yes, she was right. He was the fool. He was the idiot who thought he could bring a goddess down from her pedestal. Summer had indeed been brought down, but it wasn't by him. He should have known that all along. "Summer, come on." Julian stepped in at the right moment, taking her arm. "The children are frightened. Let's take them upstairs first." Summer gave Cole one last deep look before finally turning away. She picked up a child in each arm and left with Julian. Cole watched them go, blood still dripping from his wounds. He was filled with a profound regret. Regret for marrying Summer, regret for having those two children. This time he would not make the same mistakes. From this day forward, he would live only for himself. 3 days later was Leo's birthday. The party was held at the most luxurious hotel in the city. Crystal chandeliers cast a brilliant glow, and a champagne tower sparkled in the center of the ballroom. As always, Summer had booked the entire floor for Leo's lavish celebration. Cole stood in a corner, watching Leo and Mia hold Julian's hands, fluttering around him like two happy little birds. The children clung to Julian the entire time, deliberately ignoring their real father. Summer stood nearby, a champagne flute in her slender fingers, her gaze frequently drifting to Julian, her eyes filled with a tenderness he had never received. Mrs. Sterling is so devoted. After all these years, she still only has eyes for Mr. Vance. Isn't it the truth? And the kids are just like her, only have eyes for Uncle Julian. Summer, Julian, and I were all in college together. Back then, when Summer and Julian were a couple, it was the stuff of legends. A man in a sharp suit whispered they were this close to getting engaged right after graduation. "No wonder," someone else exclaimed in realization. A first love is a first love. Even without the title of husband, he'll always be the most important one. Some people try to force their way in, but what's the point? Another guest sneered, glancing disdainfully at Cole. So, what if he has kids? He still can't win his wife's heart. I bet he's destined to die alone. Cole listened quietly, his heart encased in a thick layer of ice. The dull ache now gone, replaced by numbness. He took a deep breath and turned toward the elevators. Just as the doors were about to close, a hand shot and Julian stepped inside, a smirk playing on his lips. The divorce will be final in 3 days, he said, looking Cole straight in the eye. You'll honor our agreement and leave, won't you? Cole pressed the button for the ground floor. Of course, a pause. I want to leave more than anyone. A satisfied smile finally spread across Julian's face. Don't worry, I'll take good care of the family for you. Besides, Summer and the kids don't like you anyway, they'll forget you soon enough. The elevator descended smoothly. Cole didn't answer. Suddenly, boom, a deafening crash, a violent jolt, and the elevator plunged into darkness. Ah, Julian screamed, fumbling for his phone. Summer, help, the elevator's broken. Cole was thrown against the wall. A sharp pain exploded in his forehead and warm liquid streamed down his face. He didn't know how much time passed before he heard the frantic sound of footsteps outside. Is anyone in there okay? A rescuer's voice called through the door. Help us. Julian pounded on the metal. My leg is stuck. The piercing shriek of metal being pried apart filled the air, and a blinding beam of light cut through the darkness. A rescuer peered in, his face grim. Mrs. Sterling. Both men have their legs pinned by the warped door. Time is critical. We can only rescue one at a time. Who should we save first? Through his blurry vision, Cole saw Summer standing behind the rescuer with the 2 children. Her gaze fell on Julian, and without a moment's hesitation, she said, Save Julian. Save Uncle Julian first. Leo and Mia cried, tugging on the rescuer's sleeve. Hurry, save him. May I, Mr. and Miss Sterling? The other gentleman is more severely injured. We strongly advise rescuing him first, I said. Save Julian. Summer's voice was as cold and hard as steel. The rescuer sighed and had no choice but to reach for Julian. Cole watched as they carefully pulled Julian out. The elevator door, now missing half its support, let out a terrifying groan. Crash! The twisted metal slammed down on his leg. A searing bone-deep pain ripped through him. The last thing he saw was Summer supporting Julian as they walked away and the 2 children cheering behind them. Then the darkness swallowed him whole. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled his nostrils, accompanied by the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor. You're awake. A doctor came over to check his pupils. You have 3 broken ribs. It's a good thing you were brought in when you were, or you might not have made it. Cole stared blankly at the ceiling. The final moments before the elevator fell in his mind. Summer's unhesitating choice to save Julian. The way she hadn't even glanced back as the twisted metal door crashed down on him. He tried to move, and a sharp pain immediately shot from his chest through his entire body. But strangely, not a single tear fell. Perhaps the pain was so extreme that even his heart had gone numb. 3 days later, Summer came to pick him up from the hospital. She stood at the door, impeccably dressed in a power suit. Her gaze fell on his bandaged chest, and she remained silent for a long moment before finally speaking. Julian still has to play the piano. I couldn't let anything happen to his hands. Cole slowly lifted his head and looked at her. So, you had to be the one to make the sacrifice. Her tone was matter-of-fact, as if she were discussing a minor inconvenience. You're a stay-at-home dad. Even if your mobility is affected, it won't have a major impact. Cole said nothing, but for the first time, he saw the woman he had loved for half his life with crystal clarity. Her features were still as elegant as a goddess's, but in her eyes, there had never been a reflection of him. Summer, he said, his voice trembling. If I had died that day, would you have cared? Summer's brow tightened, and she didn't answer. She pulled a black credit card from her suit pocket and placed it on the bedside table. Don't ask such meaningless questions. This is for compensation. As long as you behave yourself and raise the children, you will always be my husband. Cole suddenly laughed. In his last life, he had died with the title of her husband. But what did it matter? He was the one who grew old, alone, the one who was forgotten, the one who burned in the fire. So in this life, he had no desire to be her husband anymore. He would live a better, more brilliant life. He would find someone who truly loved him. He couldn't hold it in any longer. The words were about to burst out. He was done with her. Enda, at their university's medical school, 2 years ahead of him. Back then, she was famous not just for her top grades, but also for being a brilliant pianist. She had been the dream girl for countless guys on campus. What a coincidence. He smiled, gesturing to the little girl in her arms. Is this my niece? Cease, Evelyn said, gently patting the girl's back. Cease. Say hi to Cole. The little girl lifted her head, revealing a cherubic face. She shyly whispered, Hi, Cole. Her voice was as soft as cotton candy. Cole's heart melted. He crouched down to her level. Hi there, Cease. What kind of book are you looking for? Want me to help you find one? Cease blinked her big eyes and then reached out a tiny hand, gently touching Cole's cheek. You're handsome, she said in a tiny voice. You look like my daddy. The air went still. Evelyn's expression shifted, and she knelt, pulling Cease closer. I'm sorry, her father. He passed away from an illness a few years ago. A pang hit Cole's chest. He looked at this little girl who had lost her father and thought of Leo and Mia. They still had Julian. This child had no one. It's okay, he said softly, reaching out to gently stroke Cease's hair. Cease, do you like fairy tales? I have a lot of beautiful picture books right here. Cease nodded, her eyes lighting up. For the next half hour, Cole patiently showed Cease various picture books. The little girl gradually relaxed, even taking his hand and asking him to read to her. Evelyn stood nearby, watching them with a gentle look in her eyes. By the time Cole was reading The Little Prince, Cease was leaning against him, completely captivated. You have a special way of telling stories, Evelyn said softly as she paid. Cease is usually very shy, but she warmed up to you so quickly. Cole smiled, handing the wrapped book to Cease. I felt a connection with Cease. One wish, she were my daughter. He regretted the words as soon as they left his mouth, but Evelyn just nodded thoughtfully without asking more. Can we come back again? Cease asked as they were leaving, tugging on his shirt. Cole knelt down and gently pinched her little nose. Of course you can. I'll always be happy to see you. Evelyn opened her umbrella and walked into the rain with Cease in her arms. Cease, draped over her shoulder, kept waving at the bookstore until they disappeared around the corner. Cole stood at the door, watching their silhouettes vanish into the rain, a long-forgotten warmth spreading through his heart. Almost every weekend, they would come to the shop and stay for an hour or two. Cease would sit quietly on the little sofa in the corner, engrossed in a picture book, while Evelyn would pick out a medical journal and read peacefully beside her. Sometimes Cole would make them a pot of herbal tea. Evelyn would always thank him politely, and Cease would chirp, "Thank you, Mr. Cole," before burying her nose back in her book. One sunny Saturday, Evelyn suggested a trip to the amusement park. You should come with us, she said, her eyes curving into crescents in a sincere invitation. Cease has been talking about wanting to go with you. Cole had been about to refuse, but his heart softened at Cease's hopeful expression. The amusement park was a cacophony of sound. Cease held Evelyn's hand with her left and Cole's with her right, skipping excitedly from one place to another. They rode the carousel, played in the bumper cars, and even waited in line for the Ferris wheel. When the Ferris wheel reached its highest point, Cease suddenly pointed to the clouds in the distance. Daddy lives up there. Cole's heart tightened. Evelyn gently pulled Cease into her arms. Daddy is watching over Cease from heaven, she said, softly. He wants Cease to be happy every single day. Cease nodded, then turned to Cole. Cole, can you be my new daddy? The air froze. Cole didn't know how to respond. Evelyn quickly tried to smooth things over. Cease, don't be silly. I'm not being silly. Cease's face flushed. I like Cole, and Cole liked Cease, right? Cole looked at the little girl's determined expression and was suddenly reminded of Leo. He was the same way, stubbornly insisting on something once he'd made up his mind. Of course, I like Cease, he said gently. But a daddy is one of a kind. No one can ever replace him. Cease nodded, seemingly understanding, and leaned back against Evelyn. On the way home, Cease fell asleep in the back seat. Evelyn was driving, occasionally glancing at Cole in the rearview mirror. Thank you for spending the day with her, she said quietly. She hasn't been this happy in a long time. Cole shook his head. I was happy too. Outside the car window, the sunset painted the clouds in brilliant shades of gold and red. Cole instinctively raised a hand to block the light, and his sleeve slid down, revealing a long scar on his wrist. Evelyn's gaze lingered on the scar for a fraction of a second, before she quickly looked away, but for the rest of the drive, a small frown creased her brow. A week later, Evelyn came to the bookstore alone, carrying a thermos. I made this myself. It's a calming tea, she said, handing the thermos to him. It might help with your sleep. Cole was taken aback. How did you know? I have trouble sleeping. Though he had left that life behind, the past haunted him, waking him from nightmares countless nights. Evelyn pushed up her glasses, her eyes warm and perceptive. You forget, I'm a doctor. You know, you can always come to me for help. I think we can consider ourselves good friends now, right? Cole instinctively pulled his sleeve down, covering his wrist. Sorry, I shouldn't have pried, Evelyn said quickly. It's just as a doctor and as a friend. I hope you'll take care of yourself. Cole was silent for a moment before finally breaking into a smile, his eyes crinkling. I will. Thank you for the tea, and if I ever do need help, I promise I'll ask. After that, Evelyn came by more often, sometimes with Cease, sometimes alone. Each time, she would bring little things, a bouquet of wildflowers, a box of homemade cookies, or a new blend of calming tea. Cole gradually grew accustomed to their company. Sometimes, watching Evelyn and Cease reading in the store, He would have a fleeting thought that this was the life he had always yearned for, simple, peaceful, and full of warmth. One rainy night, as Cole was organizing the shelves, the doorbell rang. Evelyn stood outside, soaked to the bone, holding a feverish Cease in her arms. "I'm so sorry to bother you this late." Her voice trembled. "Cease kept crying for you. She said she could only fall asleep if you told her a story." Cole quickly ushered them in. He took the feverish child, his heart aching as he looked at her flushed little face. He gently patted her back. "It's okay, Cease, I'm here, don't be scared." That night, Cole stayed by Cease's bedside, softly telling her stories. Evelyn sat nearby, watching them with a gentle expression. By the time Cease finally fell asleep, the rain outside had stopped. Moonlight streamed through a gap in the curtains, casting a silver ribbon of light on the floor. "Thank you, Evelyn," whispered. Cole shook his head as he tried to stand. His legs, numb from sitting so long, gave way, and he stumbled. Evelyn reacted instantly, catching him as he steadied himself. He realized how close they were. Both of them blushed and looked away, a comfortable silence filling the room. She had assumed Cole was just playing some childish game of hard to get. It was only when she realized she couldn't reach him, no matter how she tried, that she began to take it seriously. But calls to his old friends all came up empty. No one had seen him. Annoyed, she hung up, went to her study, and pulled up Cole's bank account information on her computer. The screen showed that the balance on the black card she had given him remained at zero. He had left with only his personal savings, not touching a single cent of sterling money. "Huh, so he has a spine after all," she sneered, closing the laptop. Did he really think this childish stunt would make them come crawling back to him? It would never work. The next morning at breakfast, Leo and Mia were chattering about school while Julian gently served them food, occasionally looking up to smile. At Summer, the scene was picturesque, a perfect family portrait, but for some reason, Summer felt like something was missing. "Mom, the school's parent-child sports day is next week. Can